Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of December 21st to the 22nd. And I just want to say, even though I don't celebrate Christmas, I would like to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there. Hopefully you're enjoying the holidays. Hopefully you're doing it as safe as possible, especially during these tough times with COVID-19 and so forth, though. And hopefully you got the gift you wanted to get for the holidays. I'm sure there are some who are happy with their gift. I'm sure there are some that may not be as happy at all. So hopefully you got what you wanted for Christmas or for the holidays this year, though. And we basically have 4 stories to cover for this week, though, including a response to the whole situation with Halo Infinite and whether or not the Xbox One version is being canceled or not. We also have a report from XSEED about the possibility of some new games we might be seeing in 2021. We do also have a interview that one of the folks over at Stadia made to The Escapist, including about the future of Stadia, not to mention Stadia now being available on ISO devices, though. And of course we have the situation with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077, or the gift that keeps on giving with that game, to be exact. But before we get started, why don't we get started with our quick My 2 Cent part, and this is basically stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going into a huge amount of details. The first one is that we have a report of the Monster Hunter movie did top the box office this week, but took in $15 million less than the first Resident Evil movie. And you can point to many reasons on that. Some people may point to because of COVID-19, it's not playing in a whole lot of theaters. Others may point to it's from Paul Anderson, who did the Resident Evil movies, which not everyone liked and all that stuff. So you could point to multiple reasons, though. As far as where it goes from here, who knows on that one, though. We also learned about that a random YouTuber found a way that you can actually play Cyberpunk 2077 on the Nintendo Switch, though. So, but the catch, though, is the fact that this is a hacked Nintendo Switch for this to happen and all that stuff. So it's interesting. It's not something I would recommend. I don't encourage people to hack their Switches or anything like that, but I'm not going to stop someone from doing that, though. It is interesting to see this, nevertheless, running on the Nintendo Switch, and it does make you kind of wonder if CD Projekt Red would ever bring a game like Cyberpunk 2077 to the Nintendo Switch. I know some people will say that's impossible and all that stuff, and that might be true. I can't rule that out. But in an age where we're living, where a game like Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, graphically demanding games on the Nintendo Switch, though, I can't take it out of the realm of possibility that this may not happen. Of course, with CD Projekt Red, with the whole mess with Cyberpunk 2077, who knows if the Switch version will ever happen or not. And even if we hear a Switch version, though, it's probably going to be years away until it ever does make its way over to the Nintendo Switch. But still, interesting to see what this YouTuber has done. We also learned that basically there is a rating for the PC version of No More Heroes and No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggles, though. So it's nice that the games are going to be coming to the PC as well, even though I'm happy with the Nintendo Switch version that I have. But it does make you kind of wonder, if that's the case, does this mean that No More Heroes 3 will make its way over to PC, though? I mean, it's possible, or it could just be 1 and 2, to be exact, but we'll see if that ever happens. But it looks as though it is possible that No More Heroes 1 and No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle could be making its way over to the PC and all. We also learned that the PS5 has a new update that will now tell you if you're playing the PS4 version of a game or if you want to play the PS5 version of the game, which is kind of nice if you have like a PS4, if you're playing a PS4 version and you don't have the PS5 version or anything like that. So it's nice that they added this little update, at least Sony did, for the PS5. And last but not least, there are reports that Knuckles may make an appearance in the sequel to the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, right now titled Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which would be kind of interesting. It kind of makes sense to a certain degree, because anyone who saw the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie earlier this year, there was an opening where Baby Sonic was trying to outrun certain enemies, and some of those enemies look very similar to what Knuckles look like. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to work, and it's still amazing me how well that movie was done. I mean, I saw it in theaters when it came out, and I would say it was good. I mean, not perfect, not 100% great, but actually good. Like, they actually put effort into that movie, which is certainly surprising for a video game movie. But either way, for now we won't excuse me, we'll have to wait and see when the Sonic the Hedgehog movie comes out, if Knuckles is going to be in it or not. But I wouldn't completely rule that out entirely. Okay, with the quick My 2 Cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077. It seems that game it's been getting more and more controversies over time about it, ranging from how CD Projekt Red handled the situation and all that stuff. So the game has really been a big controversy for a lot of people, especially if you're playing it on the PS4 or the Xbox One, considering the fact that right now it's extremely hard to even get a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or S though. And while the PC version is certainly running better than what the PS4 or Xbox One is, although there have been some updates to those systems, so even that one is sort of running into some issues here and there, even though I really don't own a PC, so I don't know whether or not how the PC version is playing. But as far as the Stadia version going, that's been kind of smooth sailing for me in terms of playing it on Stadia and all. But in either way, it looks like there have been several woes that even CD Projekt Red is facing, but at least it seems to be there might be one bright spot to it though. In several different articles though, first one is reported, although it's been confirmed, been reported that they may have fixed this, and that is a bug that has been found in Cyberpunk 2077 that means that affects the saves over 8 megabytes are getting corrupt. According to this article from Destructoid though, it reads that, quote, "This one actually impacts all platforms, even Stadia, but should be very familiar to anyone who's played Elder Scrolls titles, from Morrowind to Skyrim. It's none other than the bloated save file bug, which makes save games unusable after certain parameters are met. It rises above 8 megabytes. The actual in-game text is save data is damaged and cannot be loaded. This isn't an isolated issue, as it seems it was just a ticking time bomb. Doing things like crafting and acquiring more items, gears, trigger the bugs, which pushed the save files over the 8 megabyte edge. It was only a matter of time until it happens though. This bug was officially acknowledged over the CDPR forum. With a current fix on PC, is set to back up all your save files, repair the game, then erase the corrupt save file and replace them. As a forum moderator recommends, keep doing this as your troubleshots, as it can often be the loading process, not the save process, that corrupts the save file. And it points out that CD Projekt support center statement is that future patches might increase the save files limit though. So apparently there was another bug found into Cyberpunk 2077, although there are reports now that supposedly they fixed this though. Again, I haven't run into it yet though and all that, but it just adds another problem to CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 and the backlash that CD Projekt Red has suffered and all that stuff. In another related part of it though, we're now learning about, in terms of Microsoft has sort of responded to basically the situation with Cyberpunk 2077. However, their approach is a little bit different though. While Sony has basically decided to take Cyberpunk 2077 off their storefront though, Microsoft is not going to do that, but they are doing two things, which is a warning label on it, and they are still going to do refunds. At least that's what Microsoft is doing. According to an article from Tom's Hardware, it says, quote, Microsoft has made a change to its Microsoft Store page to warn shoppers that Cyberpunk 2077's performance on the console is lacking. The move follows a string of recent moves by retailers to deal with the fallout of the now notorious buggy title. Basically, it points out that it basically points out that Sony went a step further and removed the game from its PlayStation Online stores and all that stuff. Many were kind of expecting Microsoft to follow suit, but while Microsoft didn't emulate Sony's moves, it did comment on the situation. It said, quote, "While we know the developers at CD Projekt Red have worked hard to ship Cyberpunk 2077 in extremely challenging circumstances, we also realize that some players have been unhappy with the current experience on older consoles. Xbox support said in a tweet. Following the tweet, Microsoft made a change to its Xbox Store page, issuing a warning for anyone looking to play the game on an Xbox One. It says, quote, users may experience performance issues when playing this game on Xbox One consoles until game is updated. It also points out that excuse me, though, yeah, and it's also point out that a lot of places are, doing refunds and all that stuff. I think that Sony and Microsoft are going to offer refunds on their online forums for those who are not happy with the game and all that stuff. So obviously Microsoft's somewhat taking a different approach to this, though. Somewhat similar to Sony's, but not entirely. Unlike Sony, though, they're not pulling it off their storefront, to be exact. And then, of course, another headache for CD Projekt Red is now there are reports of the possibility that we could see a class action lawsuit against the folks at CD Projekt Red, though. In an article from Game Industry Buzz, it reads that, quote, CD Projekt Red's own investors are reporting exploring the possibility of suing the developers for misrepresenting Cyberpunk 2077. The New York Times cites a post on a Polish financial website, Bankier, Bankier, in which a Warsaw-based attorney and CD Projekt Red investor announced he and his team are analyzing whether there are grounds for a class action lawsuit. The poster, this person said that the current focus on whether CD Projekt Red is guilty of breaking Article 286 of the Polish penalty code, misrepresenting in order to obtain financial benefits, though. The Polish developer has been under fire since Cyberpunk 2077 launched on December 10th, while the PC version is said to run well a bit with some bugs and glitches. The technical issues on the console version, especially when played on less jammed devices, PS4 and Xbox One, has prompted widespread complaint, though. CD Projekt Red apologized for not showing the last gen version in action prior to launch, instead focusing on the PC SKU, and the console edition running on more powerful hardware in PS5 with Xbox Series S and X. It also offered refunds, although asked players to give us a chance while develop fixes. Management has said the most prominent problem should be fixed by the time a second launch patch comes out in February. It has since emerged that there are inconsistencies on how these refunds are being processed and who is responsible for them. Last week, CD Projekt Red manager held an emergency conference call with shareholders to address concerns over the game's technical issues and public backlash. Excuse me. Bloomberg reported the company did held an internal meeting on Thursday in which frustrated staff questioned management about the issue with the game's development. Two anonymously attendees said the meeting began with the executives apologizing for Cyberpunk's disastrous launch. Staff asked about unrealistic development deadlines, multiple stretch of regular overtime over the past couple of years, and the impact of the game's trouble on the company's reputation. A CD Projekt Red spokesman will not comment to Bloomberg about discussions held at an internal meeting. So, yeah, CD Projekt Red really, let's be honest, they really shot themselves in the foot on this one. And given the fact that they constantly push, for the crunch, they wanted to avoid it, but they had to do it, all that stuff. If this is what the end result of it, them paying off for, yeah, and it will be really interesting to see how this lawsuit, if it happens, though, how this plays out and see what the fallout from this is going to be. But there's no doubt in my mind, CD Projekt Red is going to have to work really hard to sort of rebuild their reputation after the damage that has already been done. That said, though, it seems as though the game may have, depending on your view, may have done well, to be exact, as it's now been reported that it may have sold, get the article, 13 million copies, though, even factoring the refunds, though. According to Eurogamer, it reads that, quote, Cyberpunk 2077 has sold over 13 million copies, even factoring in refunds, CD Projekt Red has said. In a regulatory note to investors, the Polish company said its controversial blockbuster hit the 13 mark as of December 20th. 13 million is the sell-through figure, that is, its estimated volumes of retail sales across all hardware platforms, factoring in returns submitted by physical and digital shops, less all refunds requested emailed directly to CD Projekt Red by December 22nd, though. Cyberpunk went on sale on December 10th, so the game has shipped 13 million copies in just 10 days. It's a sales success, then, despite the catastrophic launch and its removal from sales from the PlayStation Store. Over the weekend, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft added a performance issue warning about the Xbox One version of Cyberpunk 2077 on the game's Microsoft page. We don't have the sales figure broken down by platform, but we do know Cyberpunk 2077 has broken records on Steam. It's the first single-player Steam game to reach 1 million concurrent players, and at the time of this article publication, Cyberpunk 2077 is the fourth most popular game on Valve's platform, with 211,059 concurrent players. It peaked today was 378,056 players. The obvious question is whether the ongoing refunds are significant enough to impact Cyberpunk 2077 sales performance. CD Projekt Red's self-imposed deadline for email refund requests ends on the 21st of December, but Sony and Microsoft are still open to refund via their own online forum. So it seems as though that despite all the woes and everything that the Cyberpunk 2077 has faced, it looks like the game probably did very well for CD Projekt Red. But going forward, it's going to be very interesting, especially when we're hearing reports about, you know, The Witcher 4 in development, what kind of impact will that have, especially after CD Projekt Red really hurt their reputation with Cyberpunk 2077. So, overall, not great news for CD Projekt Red, not great news for Cyberpunk 2077, but outside of that, though, it looks like if there is one bright spot in all of this, though, it seems as though that this game sold around like 13 million copies, though, despite the refunds and all that stuff. So that's somewhat of a bright spot, though, but going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see what impact will this have for the game itself. I mean, could this impact the release of the PS5 or Xbox Series S and X version? Could we see a delay in the DLCs or the multiplayer part, though, which we've been hearing that there might be microtransactions in that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out going forward with Cyberpunk 2077 and CD Projekt Red. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with Stadia and what supposedly Google is going to be doing with Stadia going forward and all. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our second part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, I want to talk about the situation regarding Stadia. Now, Stadia is basically now a year old, though, since it was launched back, I believe back in November, though, to mixed reviews at best. When it originally launched, many viewed it as like you were paying money for a beta and all that. I didn't really touch Stadia or anything until like around February, when they started basically rolling out the free version, though. The one where you didn't have to go through Stadia Pro or anything like that. Once that came out, I decided to give it a go. And I will say, my impression on it so far, and I still stand behind it though, is that it has potential. There is, certainly I get what Google is trying to do with it though, but I still think there are some ways to go with it though. That being said though, I don't think I certainly don't want Stadia to fail or anything like that, though, but I still think there are some areas they won't deny there are certainly some areas to improve of. But apparently in an interview that one of the folks at Stadia made with 9to5 Google, they pointed out some areas of what they are going to do going forward with the future. Not to mention, we now have Stadia on ISO devices though. But in our first article, like I mentioned, 9to5 Google, they pointed out a couple of things, couple of cliff notes that they pointed out in terms of their interview with the escapists though. First one is Google is working with ISPs on data caps, and it reads, quote, "One of the biggest bit of news in this interview regarding data caps, of course, Stadia eats up a ton of data that could be a problem for those with limits on their home internet. Comcast, for example, has been expanding its awful 1.2 terabyte data cap in the United States recently. John says that Google is working with ISPs on the topic of data cap, either trying to improve those caps or remove them entirely. How will they go? It remains to be seen, but whether you like Stadia or not, that's the kind of move that's good for quite literally everyone. Another thing they point out is basically that Android TV is already a popular place to play Stadia. It says Google is frankly lagging when it comes to bringing Stadia to its own Android TV platform. The latest Chromecast with Google TV lacks support, and the company says it's not coming until 2021. Despite that, though, John said that Android TV, and specifically the Shield TV, is already a pretty popular place to use Stadia. When asked the ability to play on a NVIDIA Shield TV or Smart TV with Android OS, John said that he's seen a lot of people play on Shield with just a sideload the Android app. He says that Google is focused on bringing Stadia broadly to as many TVs as possible, including a lot of work on the Android TV side of things. Now, we might be reading too far into this comment, but this person, John then said that Stadia would be something that's already there. That sounds like perhaps the Stadia app will become part of Android TV itself, but then again, it could be us just overthinking this. It would be exciting though. Personally, I would like to see Stadia like on smart TVs and all that. If Google's really pushing for Stadia though, that's something I would like to see more like on whatever smart TV you're using, all that stuff, not having to get that Chromecast and hook it up to your TV and all. Another thing they point out is that Stadia's tech will be upgraded, but you won't see us talking about it. He said, quote, the article reads, "Here's the good news. Stadia is getting some behind-the-scenes upgrade to its tech. Here's the bad news. Google isn't going to talk about these Stadia upgrades before they land for fear of overpromising. Google told one huge benefit of cloud gaming was the ability to swap out hardware behind it when something new is available." John didn't have any specifics to share, but he said that Google is definitely working on upgrading every part of hardware that powers Stadia. When? Who knows after it actually happens. They point out YouTube integration will expand. One of the most exciting parts of Stadia revealed in 2019 was the YouTube feature, but it took months before those features to arrive. Again, an example of one of those unfortunate overpromise of Stadia. Now that crowd play, crowd choice, and direct streaming are live, Google apparently has more on the way. John Justice didn't share any information specifically, but apparently we'll learn more next year. Hopefully we'll have the ability to maybe hopefully they'll have the ability to like save videos and load them up to YouTube. I mean, that's something I would like to see Google do that with Stadia, to be exact. Cross save rocks, but there are no plans to help the cost. Cloud gaming is truly great, but one hurdle some longtime gamers have run into is that they can't play the game they're already purchased on Stadia, at least not without a repurchase. Meanwhile, GeForce Now just runs a Windows instance so you can stream from your stream library. When asked directly about making cross-save viable to customers, meaning players don't have to spend upward of $100 to buy a game from Stadia and another platform, Google had nothing to announce. Frankly, that makes sense. Stadia sells games directly and gives away a copy just because a player owns it elsewhere wouldn't make sense for Google. As great as cross-save is, Google doesn't have any plans to make the cost of that feature easy. And last but not least, and I think one that I think is important, and hopefully Google basically works on this and does a better job with it, is that Google won't overpromise for Stadia anymore. A common thread through the interview was how John and the rest of the Stadia team are making a point not to overpromise anymore. In the 2019 launch of Stadia, Google made huge promises such as 4K 60 frames per second, revolutionary new features, and much more, yet at least very few of those promises actually pan out, which frankly is a huge part of the reason why so many people are against Stadia. John said that this is one of the big lessons learned in 2020, and that, as a rule, Google is making a point not to talk about features before they're ready, and that's something we've been seeing over the past few months. Features like YouTube's live stream messaging, family sharing, redesigning the UI, and more have been noticed by the community long before Google made a formal announcement. That will be the pattern going forward, as Google allowed word of mouth to make the community happy when these new features are delivered. That may seem like an overcorrection for Stadia, but clearly the community isn't happy with Google's tendency to overpromise, or at least make promises too early. That I agree with, and I'm hopefully, if what they're saying is true, I'm glad they're taking that approach, because they promised a lot of things that, let's be honest, wasn't ready when Stadia launched last year. And I think that they shouldn't really announce anything until they know 100% for certain that these features are ready to go to use for the Google Stadia and so forth. So hopefully they have truly learned their lesson about that, though. So it's an interesting interview. It's worth taking a look at. It seems as though Google is still very serious about this and want to make this work. I hope it does work, though. I think the concept of cloud gaming and the concept of Stadia, the idea is there. It's just that there are some areas that Google has to do a better job to really make it take off, though. But one area where now Google has added, which is finally great that they're able to do this, is the fact that now Stadia is now available on your iPhone and your iPad, though. So that's right, you could play Stadia games through your iPhone or iPad, though there is sort of a catch, as there's sort of a workaround this, to be exact. In another article from, let me get this out, from 9 to 5 Google, it has now, which points out about it, though, it points out, this is what it says, quote, because of some Apple Store politics being played by Apple, Stadia is now available on ISO, but not in the traditional form of app that we're pretty much used to. Apple being Apple means that, unfortunately, the dedicated Stadia app on iPhone and iPad can't officially play your favorite titles, such as the impressive Cyberpunk 2077, plus a stopgap option that was first pulled, then reinstated, was a fantastic Stadia browser. This effectively changed the user agent's data to allow you to connect to Stadia, and while a solid interim solution, it isn't officially linked to Google and Stadia in any way. Google's solution for Stadia gamers and potential Stadia gamers on ISO, that appeases Apple Stringy's App Store policy, is a PWA, or a progressive web app, though. This is basically, they're taking the approach very similar to what we heard about with Amazon doing with the Amazon Lunar, when they announced that, where they were going to bring it to the iPhone and iPad, but through a web app and all that stuff. And while it may not be the app like you would get from the App Store, that I know that there are going to be iPhone and iPad users would like to see, this certainly is definitely the only option at this time, though. I tried it out for a little bit. I still have to try out a little bit more of playing it on the iPhone and iPad. I hope to do a review of it soon on it, though. But I would say it works, though. I mean, the fact that I'm playing on that you could play on your iPhone and iPad, it certainly is a neat feature, though. Not to mention, for my iPhone, I'm using this, and in case you're wondering, this is a Ryzen Kishin, if I'm saying the name correctly, controller for my iPhone that I purchased and all that stuff. So it's going to be something I'm going to try, and played a little bit of Doom with it, though, and yes, it does work on Stadia and all that stuff. So it's may not be the app that a lot of people would like to see though, but it's the closest thing we have right now on ISO to playing Stadia on both the iPhone and the iPad though, especially with a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which right now is being praised on the Stadia version, and it's running pretty well. I mean, I've been playing it on my iPhone, on my iMac, and yeah, I mean, it is impressive. Outside a couple bugs I've ran into, like a locker flicking back and forth, and maybe a gun stuck to a wall or floating, though, it's running very well, especially with high frame rate mode on, which it has the game running at a 60 frames per second, though. So overall, very interesting to see the direction Google is going with Stadia for this year. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out next year and all that stuff. And it's great that we finally have Stadia on ISO devices like iPhones and iPads, although it may not be the dedicated app that some iPhone and iPad users would have liked to see. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3, and this one has to do with XSEED, ranging from looking back to 2020 for them to what they might have, to the possibility of what they might have in store for 2021. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at XSEED. For those who may not be familiar with that company though, they are a publishing company, and they've been known to publish a lot of, shall we say, niche games out there, whether it's games like, I think, Akiba Trip, Undead and Undressed, or the Rune Factory series that has been on the Nintendo platform, though they've been known to publish, or shall we say another famous one, the Serene Kagura series, though. They've published a lot of mostly anime titles, but basically niche titles to be exact. Basically, these are titles that, while may not have a huge audience, like say something along the lines of like what a Call of Duty might have, though there's still an audience nevertheless though. And basically they recently released a video of looking at the games that have done well through 2020, including some of the ones that recently came out like Sakura Rise of Rain. Basically from an article on Nintendo Life, it reads that Story of Season and Sakura, Rice, and Ruin, Ruin, not Rain, help XSEED games to a record-breaking year. It reads, according to the article from Nintendo Live, XSEED Games, a publishing arm of Marvelous USA, has announced that the company has this year surpassed previous highest sales and fast-selling records worldwide. The company has launched a new video showcasing what it describes as one of its strongest years, with diverse range of farming sims, RPGs, action and fighting games appearing across PCs and consoles, including the Nintendo Switch. Sakura Rise and Rains, which only launched last month, has already topped 500,000 sales, while Grand Blade Fantasy Verse, the North American console debut of Crygame's hit RPG Grand Blade Fantasy, reached 450,000 sales globally. I think Sakura Rise of Rain was 500,000 globally. The company also reported that Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, has already sold over 200,000 copies on Switch alone in North America. This was an incredible year for us and represents one of the most diverse lineups of games we've had, said XSEED's game president Ken Berry. Between being able to release titles long in development to releasing fresh surprises, we hope that our games have helped people stay entertained through what has been a challenging year. We want to thank our fans for all of support, and we look forward to a new year and new surprises. XSEED has already announced several games for next year, though. Switch owners will be particularly interested in Story of Season, Pioneer Olive Tree, and Rune Factory 5. That's what I'm looking forward to. Both scheduled both scheduled for 2021, launching on Nintendo platforms. More info on these and other exciting new titles will be shared in the coming months. And according from Destructoid, though, it reads that basically reads that, quote, The video ends with a thank you message to the customer base, following by a graphic showcase XSEED's current lineup for 2021. The image showed including Potomic, P-O-T-I-O-N-O-M-I-C, Akaba Trips, Hellbound Debrief, Rune Factory 5, Story of Season, Pioneers of Aulx Trees, as I mentioned, and teasing 2 of yet unannounced release. No doubt we'll be hearing more of those mystery games in the new year. So obviously XSEED, certainly despite this year being kind of challenging for a lot of folks, especially with COVID-19, though it's certainly they had a good year though. I mean, one of the games I played for them was Rune Factory 4 Special Edition, which was definitely a good game, even though visually it looked like more like an upscale version of the 3DS version, though Rune Factory 4 was originally released on the Nintendo 3DS and all that. It was still a good game nevertheless, and I'm looking forward to when Rune Factory 5 comes out next year. Hopefully that one is as good as what Rune Factory 4 was, though. Sakura of Rice and Ruin, that's one I've yet to try, but I'm going to try to get my hands on that one and play that one too, though. And the fact that they have 2 unannounced titles is very interesting, though. I'm very curious to see what those 2 titles from XSEED and Marvelous is. My hope is that some of those titles will come to the Nintendo Switch. Maybe it's another entry, maybe it's one of the entries of the Akiba Trip series could be making their way over to Switch. That's a possibility. Maybe it's another entry into the Serene Kagura series, although the original creator, we know, left following the whole issue with Sony changing some of their policy regarding certain games appearing on their platform, and sort of the issue of censorship and all that stuff. Maybe it's that. Maybe it could be a brand new franchise and brand new IP. Who knows? So we'll have to wait and see, but I am curious to see what those 2 mystery titles are. So overall, though, obviously XSEED had a good 2020 despite troubles that 2020 sort of brought to us, though. And here's hoping that 2021 will be good for them, and here's hoping we hear more about those 2 unannounced titles in 2021. My fingers are crossed and hoping that it comes to the Nintendo Switch, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our 4th and final story, and this one has to do with regards of Halo Infinite and the whole situation with the Xbox One. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 4th and final part of our My 2 Cent video for this week. And for this one, we're going to be talking about the situation surrounding Halo Infinite. Now, Halo is obviously one of Microsoft's most important IPs and all that. The first one was released when Microsoft launched their first ever video game console, the original Xbox and all that stuff. And to me, while I don't see Master Chief on the exact same level as Mario, I know some will disagree with me saying that and all, there's no doubt in my mind that Master Chief is a very iconic video game character, much like how Mario is to Nintendo, Sonic is to Sega, and yes, even you could say, you know, Ratchet and Clank or Kratos is to Sony and the PlayStation brand, to be exact, and all that stuff. But ever since, you know, 343 Industry has handled the Halo franchise, let's just say, based on what I've read and some of the response I've seen, it's been kind of mixed at best. Master Chief Collection that was released along when the Xbox One came out was heavily criticized for its multiplayer being broken and all, to the game being somewhat buggy, although now they have fixed it. They have now updated it to run on the Xbox Series X and S, which is great, but the fact that it was at a poor state when it launched didn't exactly help and all. And of course, Halo 5 Guardians, from what I understand, not everyone was a big fan of the story and all that stuff, so it was kind of, whenever 343 Industry is handling a Halo game, sometimes it gives the impression of what are they going to do to F it up and all that stuff. Well, as some of you already know, earlier this year, before the launch of the Xbox Series X and S, though, Microsoft showed off Halo Infinite, the next entry into the Halo franchise. And well, let's just say the response was not exactly 100% great. Some of it had to do with the visual side of things. This led to a situation that forced Microsoft to make the decision to basically delay the game from originally supposed to be as part of the launch lineup for the Xbox Series S and X, which means that Microsoft would not have like a killer app title, much like how Nintendo had a killer app title when the Nintendo Switch launched back in 2017, which is basically The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is still selling very well to this day. The statement that Microsoft made back then, that Phil Spencer said about the decision back in August, was, "We're disappointed that we know it was something people were looking forward to this year, but we're also incredibly committed to delivering a great game, and I think that's the most important thing. I apologize to the fans because I never like to set up expectations and then not hit them, but I also believe that we are making the right decision in the long run for Xbox and Halo and for our customers, though." So yes, it is a disappointment that Halo Infinite was not out this year, and it looks like we may have to wait until fall 2021 to play it, unless we hear reports of another delay possibility, though. But sometimes that delay may be a good thing at the same time, as it gives the developers time to try to iron out some areas and all that. So hopefully by next year, though, they've ironed out enough stuff that Halo Infinite is released, and that it is a good game that Xbox owners or Halo fans could like and all that stuff. But one rumor that has started to pop up over the week has been basically the rumor about the possibility of the Xbox One version being canceled. A lot of this is also following the fallout we saw with Cyberpunk 2077 and how that was played in a very poor state, especially when it was released on the Xbox One and the PS4, although supposedly there have been a lot of hot updates and patches that has made the games, at least from what I've been hearing, better and all that stuff. But anyway, that situation with Cyberpunk 2077 has led to basically the possibility of whether Microsoft should just pull the plug on the Xbox One version completely. Even some fans are a little bit worried that this could be a Cyberpunk 2077 type situation. And a recent report pointed out to a certain LinkedIn page that's basically mentioned no word on the Halo Infinite Xbox One version, leading to speculation that the Xbox One version was canceled and all. Well, apparently 343 Industry responded to this, and their basically response was that wasn't the case, though. In an article from excuse me, on Pure Xbox, it reads that, quote, "There's been a rumor doing the rounds this week that the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite has been scratched. It all stems from a LinkedIn profile of Halo's Infinite UI artist, who yesterday added the Xbox One version game to his page after initially leaving it out, causing all sorts of speculation. The Verge Tom Warren later confirmed via 343 Industry that the game was still on track for the last gen console. He basically wrote on Twitter, quote, "Microsoft has confirmed to us that Halo Infinite is still coming to the Xbox One. This was after 343 employees didn't have Xbox One listed in their work bio for Infinite. Now updated, though. If all of this wasn't already enough, 343 community manager also chimed in publicly on Twitter, reportedly denying the rumor in response to a now deleted fan tweet. He responded by saying, 'Nope, please let me enjoy the holidays, though.'" So apparently it seems, for the moment though, it doesn't look like Halo Infinite is going to be canceled for the Xbox One. Now, could this change in any way? Yeah, it is possible. I mean, a lot can happen between now and fall 2021, supposedly when Halo Infinite comes out, though. So it is possible that the Xbox One version could be canceled, though. That could technically happen, and they could be putting all their resources on basically the Xbox Series S and X version to be exact. So it's definitely not out of the realm of the possibility that the Xbox One version could technically be canceled and all that stuff. That said, at the same time, it's also possible they may choose to continue bringing the game to the Xbox One and all that stuff, especially with, you know, Xbox Game Pass and all. So it's definitely, so that there is a possibility that this could go both ways though. I mean, to me, I'm kind of leaning maybe a little bit towards the idea that I do think that it is possible they will cancel the Xbox One. But again, that is just speculation, and time will ultimately tell whether or not we know if the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite is still going, or whether or not Microsoft decides to pull the plug on this. So overall, right now, it does seem the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite is still going, and it's still planned to be launched alongside the Xbox Series S and X version, supposedly sometime in fall 2021, assuming they can hit that launch date and all. So for now, that's the case, but it's certainly not out of the realm of the possibility that Microsoft could, between now and when Xbox Infinite finally launches, that they may choose to pull the plug on the Xbox One version. And if that, should that happen, I personally would not be in any way surprised by that. Will there be people who might be disappointed about it? Yeah, there might be some people disappointed though, but at the same time there might be some people who think that it probably was for the best for Microsoft to do this and focus on purely just the Xbox Series X and S version though. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week, and again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the situation with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 though? Do you think the situation is just getting worse and worse? Do you think it will get better next year in any way? Do you think that Microsoft made the right decision of not pulling the game off of their storefront and instead putting up a warning label and all? Or do you think they should have taken Sony's route and pulled Cyberpunk 2077 from their digital storefront, though? Do you think we could see a class action lawsuit against CD Projekt Red by some of these investors, or do you think it's unlikely to happen? And do you think the game is still a failure despite selling over 13 million copies, or do you think, despite all the controversy, you think the game will still continue to sell very well? What are your thoughts about the future of Stadia? Are you pleased with the way Google is handling Stadia right now? Or do you think there are areas you think they could improve upon and fix? And do you think some of their approaches, like not over-promising, do you think this is the right direction to go? And for those who have an iPhone and iPad, have you yet tried out Stadia on iPhone and iPad? Has it worked for you in any way? Has it not worked for you at all? What are your thoughts about XSEED recapping 2020 though? Were you pleased with some of the games they put out this year? Were there games you wish they put on other systems and all that stuff? And what do you think about some of these these two mystery titles they're working on though? Do you have a good idea what those titles could be? Is it possible it could make their way onto any particular system that you would like to see it on? Like, for me, I would like to see some of those titles make their way over to the Nintendo Switch. And what are your thoughts about the 343 industry responding to Halo Infinite not being canceled on the Xbox One, though? Do you think it's the right decision to continue bringing this game to the Xbox One? Or do you think that Microsoft or 343 industry should pull the plug on the Xbox One version, though? Do you think that will happen, or do you think that will not happen at all? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description down below. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day, and of course, happy holidays then. Bye!